You're listening to Inside Outside Innovation, episode 62. Today's episode is part 2 of an interview with Arvind Nagarajan, the managing director of Pearson Affordable Learning Fund. In this segment, Arvind and Josh discuss how a financial focus affects the organization of the fund and how PAL figured out if an accelerator was the right move for them. You can find Arvind's contact info in the show notes. Hi there, everyone. I'm Victory, the producer of Inside Outside Innovation, the podcast that brings you the latest insights from people who know the most about building lean businesses, innovating within corporations, and disrupting entire industries with passion and precision.
So I'd like to tap into, it's probably a misconceived notion that a lot of people have in that, one of the best ways to be able to especially focus on such an important area like education is obviously this should be government work or social sector work or NGOs or whatnot to be able to move this forward. Yet you're coming at it from a very different angle, from a venture capital, and telling me that it's very financial driven. Tell me about the pros and the cons to that approach, because there's obviously a lot of pros that I'm sure when you unpack it, especially when thinking about the competitive nature and what that drives and from performance standpoints. But I just want to throw that out to you. Talk to me about the pros and cons of VC approaching something that many people might say, I think that's a government or NGOs left to deal with it.
Oh, yeah. That's a very common refrain. And let me start by, so my boss often says this, which is a really great line. He says, the road to hell is paved with false dichotomies. And so it's an interesting, because people are often have this debate of public versus private, and that private, anything for profit can have a toxic reputation, especially when you think of the States in terms of education. And the approach that we take is that we don't believe private is good or public is good. What we're looking for is how can you what are the most effective solutions for students to get quality education? And so private is if you look at emerging market education, governments have spent trillions of dollars and have really been unable to in the past decades deliver significant learning results. There's been great progress in getting kids into school. So we now have above 95% primary school enrollment rates across most countries in the world, nearing 100%. And so that challenge has been really effectively solved. But in terms of what they're learning in school, it's been very dismal. And, in emerging markets, people really do value education to a very deep extent. They see that as a significant pathway out of poverty and into the middle class, into moving their children into a place that they aren't able to be. And, that's why we see in urban areas, 50 to 70% of students are attending private schools. So that market already exists in a big way. And so, we don't believe that the private sector is going to take over any of these markets and is going to educate all the students. But we think that it is going to be a part of the solution for delivering education. And that part where we see is, emerging market parents are willing to pay for solutions that deliver. Communities see education as a nation building process. So we see more and more strong entrepreneurs entering this space because they see this as a way of really contributing to their country in a way that's really important. And we see the partnership opportunities, like, for example, at the Spark schools, there is a real estate company that is given favorable leases to the Spark schools because they say, okay, this is an environment where we can build communities around a Spark school when we go into new places. So it makes sense for us to have the Spark School as a kind of centerpiece where we can where we can create a community development around that. And so things like that, I think that's where the financial opportunity becomes attractive, because for us, unless you're able to financially deliver returns, you'll never be at a scale and size significant enough to be a meaningful contributor at a system level. That's where we see the potential.
Tell me about the importance of kind of co-investing. You mentioned a bit ago about finding geographic partners. How do you work with those geographic partners on the sourcing and the vetting and the funding and the ongoing advising, counseling, management of those investments?
Yeah. So, we've started to get better and better at this. This is, I think, one of the keys is from a portfolio management point of view, you have to know what you know and what you don't know. And I think what we've learned is that we spend a lot of time traveling. We're on the, I spend a lot of my time on a plane. I'm in India every, 2 weeks every quarter. But there are gaps. You can't just often, it requires an email to set up a time. You can't just pick up the phone. Sometimes there are different things that you can provide. And so that's where, and we don't understand markets as deeply. So in a country like South Africa or India or Ghana, what are the paths to success? What are some of the challenges from a government standpoint or from a scalability standpoint that you have to think about? Those aren't areas that we have expertise on. So what we found to be successful is partnering with either angels or institutional investors that have a deep geographic focus within that country or region. And they can provide that complementary support at the board level, but also just at a more day-to-day level from a portfolio management point of view, because we found the best thing to be really smart angels that have operated businesses successfully in those regions can provide such an invaluable sense of mentorship and a sounding wall to the entrepreneurs. Because at the end of the day, the biggest challenge in investing in emerging markets, period, is human capital. That's the barrier to scaling. So you don't have as many mentors to look up to see that here's the path, here's the roadmap to success. And so having those people from those markets I think, has been a really critical thing that we've seen has been really helpful and something that now we look to identify more proactively when we're making a new investment.
Probably similar along that vein. Can you talk to me about any of the other types of partners or other partner programs that you've done? I saw a little bit of the Edupreneur Accelerator, a little bit of combination with VilCap. I think you and I'm also a mentor for VilCap teams. And so how do those partnerships enable you to be successful?
We're always thinking about what's like the long-term pipeline for us as a Series A investor. There needs to be there needs to be more and more companies entering that seed stage and, innovating and trying different things. And so when we were early on in the life of the fund, we recognized that the pipeline was kind of shallow within education. So how could we raise the profile? And so Village Capital was a fantastic partner in terms of running an accelerator program that identified different startups within education, but then kind of just got different local accelerators, incubators, investors, and operators to really think, okay, this is a space that I should be giving some time to and considering more. And we've really seen the dividends of that in terms of more and more. I mean, we had 100 applications or so for our India accelerator that we ran with them, and about 70 plus for in South Africa where we ran a regional accelerator. And those types of ecosystem building efforts are crucial for us because as a sector specific investor, what we have to do is really demonstrate that education is an area that we know and understand really well. And then on the other hand, we need to continue to build out a flow of pipeline where companies are recognizing us and are coming inbound more so than us outbound.
Wait, real quick, how many years in after PALF was founded did you understand that you needed to do something like the accelerator?
So in 2012, the fund was founded, and we ran it in 2013, so a year later.
Oh, so it's pretty quick. Yeah, interesting. If I'm a corporation who is looking to start a venture capital arm, what are some of the things that you would share with them as any lessons learned or best practices or things that if you were to rewind back the clock or your peers who are on the leadership team rewind the clock that you would wish you would have known a few years ago when PALF was started?
Yeah, there's a laundry list here. I'd say one is, I'm sure if you were to talk to someone who is from a corporate venture capital fund that runs things differently, there's probably pros to that I'm unaware of. But I really do think that having a non-strategic focus can be really helpful because I think I've just found a big struggle is with the best entrepreneurs. They are really worried about tying up with a corporation. They recognize the benefits, but they're very cautious about the potential downsides. And so having that clear demarcation has been, I think, a critical factor for our success.
Do you think, because you said the best entrepreneurs, should you almost be concerned if they see you as a lifeline and they can't wait and they're just linking up with you? I mean, there's a little bit of that's showing the courage and the solidarity that they have in their plan and their business idea, right?
Definitely. I mean, it's surprising. Like it's like a little litmus test is just the number of times they use the word Pearson versus our fund. is like a little litmus test, because they're like, oh, it'd be so nice to have Pearson as a partner here. And you're like, well, this isn't, if you think that this is like the Pearson brand is what's going to save your company, that's, I think there's probably, you have a few things to learn here. It is interesting, because it's something that we've kind of recognized is like, oh, wow, the companies that, the deals we end up fighting for that have competing interests are the ones where they're saying, well, look, this is actually, it's not as clear cut how these, downsides will be mitigated.
Yeah. Good. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. Any other lessons learned that you had?
Yeah. I think the other is setting out at the onset how you'll be measured, and how you're going to be set up from a decision-making point of view. Just like little things like, where does the money, does the fund sit as an external entity? Where, are the funds actually sitting, or are you drawing from the balance sheet? Do people understand? Because I think it's important when you come from a corporate world, you often don't understand this to the level of nuance, which is your returns are long-term and your failures will emerge before your successes. Because the nature of venture is that you're going to have the companies that fail will materialize before your successes are fully successful. And that can be a tough pill for corporates to swallow, that are often thinking quarter to quarter, that are often thinking about things in a more linear fashion. And so I think getting those expectations set the right way is very important.
All right, Arvind, any other things that you would like to share, or that people should know about you, or any plugs for PALF that you want to give at the end?
Well, anyone, we're always, the door is always open in terms of, we're always looking for ways to partner with companies in education space, either in terms of publishing or finding new entrepreneurs or running new programs. So if there's anyone who's working in this space, it is one that we are always, because we're a small team of 7 covering large markets, we are always open to collaboration opportunities.
That wraps up another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. If you've got a topic or area you'd like us to dig into, let us know, because we'd love to share our insights and invite other experts like Arvind onto the show so they can share theirs. Until next time, go out and innovate.